The keys to online success aren't one big secret that every content creator is holding on for themselves, but it also isn't just dumb luck. I'm fairly confident I'm yet to introduce myself anywhere on the internet, mostly because of how many influencer scam emails I get that just use my username or leave the custom areas blank entirely. My name's Alana and I've been working as an artist for the past 2 years, primarily posting on TikTok and Instagram. You may have seen some of my videos and left some kind of hate comment, or were just left confused, or both. Today I'm just going to share with you my journey on how I got to where I am today and answer some of the questions that you guys asked me over on Instagram. I started posting to TikTok in 2020 during the start of the pandemic, my first video being a terrible Animal Crossing painting. I was finishing my fine art degree at the time and the pandemic had closed all graduate opportunities, so I knew I was going to be moving back home and returning to my part-time muck employee job. And I desperately wanted to be making some kind of side hustle money from selling prints online. Now, the work I was making at university was very conceptual and fine arty, and I knew that that stuff was not going to sell. I felt like to be able to sell my art online, I had to be making art for people, things that were currently popular. After about 6 months of posting very random and inconsistent videos of paintings that were not fulfilling to me in the slightest, I made a video on giving away all of my art for free. I really felt like I needed to get rid of all of this artwork so that I could have absolutely nothing around me and I could just have complete clarity and think about what it was that I wanted to be making. A little while later, I then made this absolute hideous painting, and that video gained around 800,000 views. The video has nothing special, it is just me painting, but I will do a video analysis as to why it went well later on. I ended up making a couple of these paintings and people were commenting saying they wanted to buy prints and the paintings and if I had any kind of store. I ended up making an Etsy store and I sold my first piece for about £150. That was a huge shock because I was a part-time employee struggling to get an adult job after university, and that is how much I made in about 3 days. And I had made it in 1 day. These videos did fairly well. I gained around 30,000 followers in 2 weeks and I quit my job. I just felt like if I didn't take the opportunity to work full-time on my art there and then I would never have the opportunity ever again in my life. I would really like to recognize the privilege I had in that I had moved back in with my family, so I didn't have to pay any rent or bills, and I had a small pot of savings that I had saved from that summer. Unless you're in a similar position, I wouldn't recommend quitting a stable source of income. But if the opportunity ever arises for you to work on your art, even if it's just for a week or a month or a couple of months, you should always take it. I then just kept on posting on a regular basis because the biggest way to grow any kind of audience really is just consistency. But that's also being recognizably consistent. When I was making random videos every so often, no one could make the connection that those all belonged to the same person. At the end of university, I was doing a lot of work on performance art, in particular performance drawing and painting, but I was really interested in the display of the documentation of the performance and not the performance itself. I made a variety of these soft sculptures that you could wear, and they were for drawing and painting, and then when on display it would be the drawing and the sculpture displayed side by side. After university, I still really wanted to pursue a fine art career, so I made this sculpture to submit to any open calls that I found. Around August 2021, I had built an audience of about 100,000, and that was just from posting my paintings. These paintings and the way I filmed them became recognisably mine and associated with my name. But I started to get into a bit of a slump as to the direction of my work, and I remembered I had made this sculpture nearly a year ago, and I had never used it. So I decided to use it in a video, and people loved it, some people hated it, mostly loved, and this then led on to the sculptures that I've made today and is ultimately what I'm known for and how I've built my accounts. I really do have to acknowledge that luck is an element of online success, but I do really want to talk about how you can make your own luck and how you can make videos that will likely get seen. I am going to be honest here, and landing a big viral hit is half luck and it's half hard work, and sometimes the algorithm is just not going to reward you for your hard work. You can post a video on one day and it receive millions of views, and on another day or just on another platform it won't receive half as many. I said earlier that there wasn't really anything special about this video, and that is true to an extent. It is just a video of close-ups and then a reveal of the painting at the end, which is a formula that works really well for a lot of artists, the premise being that people will stick around to see the final result. These 3 paintings have about a year gap between them, and the videos and the paintings look like they could be made by 3 different people, but they follow a very similar formula. Number 1 is that there's a hook. At the start, there's something that makes you stop scrolling and it brings you in to watch the video. Number 2 is that you get a tease of the whole piece before you see it as a re-hook. Number 3, there isn't any stillness. Everything is moving, there's no awkward 0.2 seconds of the end of a clip where there's no motion, and that could personally be just a pet peeve, but it does come across as kind of sloppy editing. And number 4 is simply that they're not too long. Especially on TikTok, you're not always feeding videos to people who follow you. You're always feeding videos to people who don't follow you. And people who don't know who you are aren't always, well, sometimes they do, but most of the time they're not going to stick around for 30 seconds of footage of you just setting up your paints. The final thing that I've learned about these videos is that you have to make some kind of offering. For me, it took so long to figure out as to why some of my videos did really well and why others not so much. And this will differ for everyone, but for my content, when I offered my weirdness at the start, people were offered something to kind of stick around. I'm not saying you have to be weird online to get noticed, that is just something that's inside of me that people seem to enjoy. For others, they showcase their peacefulness, their satisfying aesthetic. For some, their ability to tell a story, and others, it's offering a friendship. Their videos feel like you're on a video call with them. Usually the beginning of your video content should show what you're going to be offering, and from that people will start to recognize you as someone who stands out. You kind of play into that building a parasocial relationship. In my work, people are offered a taste of the surrealness that's inside my paintings, and they end up sticking around to the end of the video, and some of them choose to follow or even purchase some of my work because they felt connected with the universe that's inside my paintings. I would say one of the biggest things that really helped me was doing research. And that's looking at creators that you watch and thinking to yourself, why do I watch them? Ignoring the artwork entirely and just figuring out, why did I stop on this video? Was it the quality, the editing, the aesthetic? Was it the story setup? Look at how their content is formulated and what elements of that contribute to their content's success. Don't try replicating their work, because ultimately you are just going to get bored and you're going to feel that emptiness where you just know that it's not yours. But through those notes that you've made, you can try and build your own foundations for the type of content that you want to be posting. Even though the main point about this video is about how to sell your art, when getting started, your focus shouldn't be about selling. When my focus was purely on selling products, I was making all kinds of just shit. Paintings of Animal Crossing characters, flowers, snakes, just anything that was popular. I even started making resin products to try and sell on Etsy. And obviously none of it did well, mostly because it wasn't good, but also because there was no connection being built with my audience. No one knew who I was from these videos. I wasn't offering any kind of consistency. The moment I switched to making art that I wanted to make, people were able to build a connection with my work. If you're just picking all the popular stuff and changing your art all the time, then you're not building any repertoire for yourself. And if you are doing that, it's perfectly fine. It just means that you haven't found your style yet, and you should really prioritize finding yourself in your artwork before you even consider trying to make any sales. Building an audience online is not just about your artwork, it's also about the content that you're making. And when people say to upload high quality content, they're not talking about cameras and lighting and all of that. And they're talking about making high quality content with what you already have. Sure, if it's filmed on a toaster, people probably are just going to scroll on by, that's just how it is. But just things like filming clean shots where you're not blocking the camera, having decent natural lighting, and just learning how to edit a little. When it comes to uploading photos of your artwork to Instagram, just clean, easy to read photos. People say that you need some kind of running aesthetic, and while that is helpful to some, I mean, if you just take a look at my Instagram, I suppose chaos is an aesthetic if you make it one. I think perhaps a lot of artists aren't really aware as to how they got their growth, and they just say things like, I've posted regularly and you can do it too. And while that is true to an extent, I feel like a lot of onlookers and people who tried and then gave up so soon They hear that and they just assume that it's all just dumb luck, when really it's about how to make that luck happen for you. And if you really want it, you have to stick around even when the algorithm is just kicking sand in your eyes. How do painters earn money? Painters specifically earn money through selling originals, prints, and doing commissions. Those commissions can be from selling original paintings, doing murals, or more commercial work. But also a lot of painters put their artwork on notebooks, sketchbooks, mugs, pins, blankets, anything you can think of really. And those more merchandise items are about extending your profits from one artwork. How do I price my work? I'm going to break this down just for paintings and prints, as that's what I sell and we'll be here forever if I talked about everything else. At the start I would honestly say low and slow, but nothing below minimum wage. If your pricing is too low, people won't see the value in purchasing your work, and that's when you get a lot of those people who start saying that your work is overrated, it's overpriced, and that they can do it themselves. You should take the smallest size painting that you're going to be offering and charge what you would be comfortable paying somebody else to make it. And then from there you can kind of build your pricing up based on size. When it comes to factoring in material costs, I personally buy paint every 2 months. And I also make my own canvases, which is a lot cheaper than buying them ready-made. So the cost per painting for me is usually only around £5 to £20. So I primarily charge based on my labour time, the demand, and the size of the paintings. You don't want to ever outprice your current customers, but you also don't want to do yourself dirty in charging way too low for your work. Prints are a really great way of making additional income from a singular piece of art. They're also really good for making your work readily available for people who can't necessarily afford an original painting. Some things to consider when pricing prints are things like if they're a limited edition run, the quality of the paper, the demand for them, and their size. And also if you outsourced them from somewhere, you should factor in the manufacturing prices for them. It's just I personally make prints my own, so the cost per print is quite literally not very much at all for me. Where to sell my work? When starting out, Etsy is your friend, even if their fees aren't that friendly. However, you're not making any manual payments to them, so there's no commitment to the website, and they just take a slice of the pie when you make a sale. Etsy is also a search engine, so you should be using it as one. Just learning how to write good descriptions, using their tag features can generate sales from people who don't even know you on your social media. People can find you through searching for things on Etsy. When you get to a point where you have an audience and you are paying monstrous fees to Etsy, that is when I would say that you should consider opening your own store. I think for the year that I used Etsy, I paid around £2,000 for them, and when my heart fell out my arse overseeing that's when I decided to make my own website. I personally use Squarespace. I pay about $250 for a year, and that is it. They don't take any transaction fees or listing fees or anything like that. Although Stripe and PayPal, because they deal with the banking transactions for me and security and all of that, they will take a fee out of your payments, but there's really nothing compared to what Etsy take from you. How do I make digital copies of my work and make prints? Firstly, you can just outsource prints. You take a nice photo of your work and you upload it to the supplier's website and they send you the prints in the mail. It is quick and easy. I just personally choose not to do it because I don't want to deal with any misprints or having to store stock anywhere or having lots of excess stock from prints that didn't do too well. To make my prints, I'm just going to give you a super speedy rundown of what I do. I take photos with my camera outside on a clear day, but I just make sure I'm in the shade, otherwise the canvas texture might cast these tiny shadows on the painting. I take photos focusing on the top, the middle and the bottom, and then in Photoshop I just crop them down and stitch them together and do a little bit of minor editing, and then I print them. I didn't used to always make them like that. I used to just use my phone and I would set it to the 8K setting and just take a picture from that and edit it on Photoshop and print from there. I mean, you can take pictures using your phone in the stages and stitch them together on Photoshop. You don't have to use a camera. But I would recommend doing the stitching method just because you can get really nice, crisp, clean images over just using one image where the bottom is slightly blurry or something. Before you say, I don't have Photoshop, you can find it at your own risk. Should I have a solid portfolio before I start selling? I kind of touched on this earlier, and the answer is yes and no. You can definitely work by selling and developing your work as you go along, and that is exactly what I've been doing. It just so happens that it's easier to have growth when you already have an established niche. Your work should and will naturally change over time as you work on it, and that's just a sign of development. The core you will always remain in your work. When do you know you're big enough to sell? You don't need to reach a certain follower count to start selling. I quite literally started selling from the very first big video and have been selling ever since. From the start, it is just about posting your work and working on your art, but you can still have your work available to purchase. It's just naturally as you start to grow, you get more buyers. And if you're using Etsy, you may even start selling without a large audience. In conclusion, my main points are being consistent, and that's being recognizably consistent. It's making high quality content with what you have, starting out on Etsy, and just being patient. It is unlikely you're going to get it straight away. It took me about 6 months of posting till I finally had a big video. And even now, with close to 500,000 people who follow me across platforms, I still run into some months with low sales and low engagement. Social media is just very up and down when it comes to selling your work.